There was a man who turned heads wherever he went. His sharp jawline, piercing eyes, and a smile that could melt the coldest heart. But beneath his charm, he was a con artist, a master deception who lived by wooing women, spinning tales of love and devotion until their bank accounts ran dry. On a warm Sunday afternoon, Derek spotted his next target, Margaret Ballaghan, a 60-year-old woman. She had everything money could buy, but Derek noticed a longing in her eyes, the same look he had preyed upon countless times before. With his well-practiced charisma, he slipped into her world, offering companionship, laughter, and whispered promises of love. Margaret, who hadn't felt this alive in years, fell deeply. She ignored the warnings of her best friend, Evelyn, who sensed something wasn't right. As months passed, Derek charmed his way into Margaret's inner circle, slowly securing his place in her life and her fortune. But just when he thought he had everything under control, something unexpected happened. Margaret started feeling unusual fatigue, odd cravings, and an unshakable sense of change. A doctor's visit revealed the impossible. Margaret was pregnant at 60 years old. Shock, disbelief, and a flood of emotions filled her heart. Was this a medical anomaly, a miracle? And more importantly, how would Derek react to this life-changing event? Margaret sat in her living room, staring at the ultrasound scan in her hands. It was real. She was carrying a child at 60, after believing motherhood was beyond her reach. Life had indeed surprised her in the most unimaginable way. She placed a gentle hand on her stomach, a mixture of fear and excitement washing over her. Derek, ever the smooth talker, reassured her, saying this was fate, that their love was so powerful it defied nature. Margaret, blinded by emotion, wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. But not everyone was convinced. Her best friend, Evelyn, sat across from her, swirling the wine in her glass but not drinking it. Her sharp eyes studied Margaret closely. "So let me get this straight," Evelyn said finally. "You're pregnant at 60? Margaret sighed, already bracing for skepticism. "Yes, Evelyn." The doctor confirmed it. "I know it's shocking, but it's happening." Evelyn leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Margaret, listen to yourself. This isn't normal. Women don't just magically get pregnant after menopause. Are you absolutely sure Derek isn't playing some kind of game?" Margaret's heart clenched at the suggestion. She wanted to defend him, to shut Evelyn down immediately, but the words caught in her throat. Derek had been perfect, too perfect. He always knew what to say, how to make her feel special. Was it possible Evelyn was right? I don't know," Margaret admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But why would he lie about something like this? He seemed genuinely happy about the baby. Evelyn set down her glass and crossed her arms. "Because he's a con artist, Margaret. Think about it. He came out of nowhere, charmed you into trusting him, and now you're miraculously pregnant? What if he planned this? What if this is another of his schemes?" Margaret's mind swirled with doubt. She wanted to brush off Evelyn's concern, but deep inside, a small voice tugged at her. What if she was right? That night, Margaret lay in bed next to Derek, listening to his even breathing. He had fallen asleep quickly, as if he had no worries in the world. But Margaret couldn't rest. Her hand went to her stomach again, feeling a strange mix of connection and unease. The next morning, she made a decision. She would go back to the doctor alone. If she was truly pregnant, she needed to know everything about this impossible miracle. But if something didn't add up, she needed to find out the truth. Margaret sat in the doctor's office, her fingers gripping the armrest of the chair as she waited for Dr. Camus to speak. The silence in the room was deafening, and her heartbeat pounded in her ears. She had come alone, without Derek, without Evelyn, just her and the unsettling questions that had been tormenting her. Dr. Camus, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, tapped a few keys on his computer before turning to her with a soft but serious expression. "Mrs. Margaret, I've reviewed all your test results thoroughly." He paused, his fingers interlocking. "You are indeed carrying a fetus, but there's something strange about this pregnancy." Margaret's breath hitched. "Strange? What do you mean?" The doctor leaned forward. "At your age, natural conception is almost impossible. Even with medical intervention, it would be extremely risky. But what concerns me most is that based on your blood work. The conception date doesn't match the timeline you provided. Margaret's stomach dropped. What are you saying, doctor? Dr. Camus sighed. According to these results, you've been pregnant longer than you think. Nearly 3 months along, not just a few weeks as you initially thought. Margaret's mouth fell open. That can't be. That's impossible. I met Derek only 2 months ago. A heavy silence filled the room. The doctor studied her face carefully. Are you sure about that, Margaret? Her mind raced. She had met Derek at a charity gala 2 months ago. Their whirlwind romance had taken off almost immediately. Could it be possible she had been pregnant before meeting him? But how? No, that wasn't possible. She hadn't been with any man before Derek. Unless her hands began to tremble. A memory surfaced. Weeks before she met Derek, she had gone in for a health checkup and taken some prescribed supplements for her blood pressure. Could something have happened during that visit? Or was Derek lying to her? Margaret stood up abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. Doctor, is there a way to know who the father is? Dr. Camus nodded. Yes, but not until later in the pregnancy. However, if you have any doubts, I suggest you start asking questions. Margaret left the hospital in a daze. Her whole world felt like it was spinning. That evening, she sat across from Derek at the dining table, watching him carefully. He was laughing, cutting his steak, talking about his business deals as if nothing was wrong. Derek, she finally spoke, interrupting his story. Do you remember the exact night we conceived? Derek's fork froze midair, his eyes flickering with something she couldn't quite place. But in the next second, he smiled smoothly. Of course, darling. That night in Mombasa, at the private villa. Why do you ask? A chill ran down Margaret's spine. They had gone to Mombasa 4 weeks ago. The doctor had said she was 3 months pregnant. Margaret smiled, hiding the storm brewing inside her. Derek was lying, and now she had to find out why. Margaret barely slept that night. Derek's smooth response at dinner kept replaying in her mind, and the timelines weren't adding up. She'd been pregnant for 3 months, but had only been with Derek for 2. Something was wrong. Had she been pregnant before meeting him, or was there something about Derek she didn't know? By morning, she had made up her mind. She needed answers. The secret investigation began. Margaret knew she couldn't confront Derek yet. Not until she had solid proof. Instead, she decided to do something drastic. She called Evelyn. Her daughter picked up on the first ring, her voice dripping with suspicion. What do you want, Mother? Margaret swallowed her pride. Evelyn, I need your help. There was a mocking laugh. Help? You need my help? This must be good. I need you to look into Derek. Evelyn exhaled, finally realizing something was wrong. You finally see something isn't right, I see. Margaret clenched her jaw. Do you know something? Not much, Evelyn admitted, but I never trusted that man. He came out of nowhere, charmed you like a prince, and suddenly you're carrying his child? Come on, Mother, this isn't a fairy tale. Margaret sighed. Please, Evelyn, just help me find out who he really is. There was a long pause. Then Evelyn said, Fine, but if I find something shady, I expect a real apology for calling me jealous. Margaret exhaled. Deal. That afternoon, Margaret went to Derek's study. He had stepped out for a business meeting, so she had the house to herself. She started searching drawers, files, anything that would give her a clue. Then she found it, a long briefcase hidden behind a row of books. Her fingers trembled as she tried to open it, but of course it required a code. Think, Margaret, think. She tried his birthday. Wrong. She tried their anniversary. Wrong. Then she remembered something. Derek always mentioned his late mother's birth year. He had even used it as his phone password. She punched it in 1959. Click. The briefcase popped open. Inside, Margaret found stacks of papers, but one caught her attention immediately, a medical report. She read through it, and as the words sank in, her knees buckled. It was a fertility test dated last year. It stated in clear, bold letters, Derek is infertile. Margaret's breath hitched. She read the report again, her fingers trembling. Derek couldn't father a child, yet she was pregnant. What could that mean? And Derek knew. He had been lying all along. Margaret stood frozen in Derek's study, gripping the fertility report like it was a ticking time bomb. If he couldn't father a child, how then was she pregnant? Was the test wrong? Or had she somehow conceived without realizing it? A cold shiver ran down her spine. She needed to confront him. That evening, Margaret sat in the living room, the fertility report on the table in front of her. She heard Derek's car pull into the driveway, then the slam of his door and his footsteps approaching. He entered with his usual smile, loosening his tie. "Hey, love, you're up late." Margaret stayed silent. Derek frowned. "What's wrong?" She slid the report across the table. "Explain this." His eyes flickered with something, shock, fear, but in an instant he composed himself. "Where did you find this?" "In your study." Derek sighed, rubbing his temples. "Margaret, I can explain." "Then do it," she said sharply. He hesitated. "That report is old. I took another test recently, and it turns out the first one was wrong. The doctor said I could have children." Margaret narrowed her eyes. "And where is that test result?" Silence. She shook her head. "You're lying." Derek took a deep breath. "Margaret, listen. It doesn't matter what that report says. The only thing that matters is that I love you, and we're having a baby together." Margaret stared at him, her heart pounding. "That's not an answer." Before Margaret could press further, her phone buzzed. It was Evelyn. She answered. "Evelyn, not now." "Mother, listen to me." Evelyn's voice was urgent. "I found something about Derek." Margaret's grip tightened on the phone. "What?" "He was engaged before, to a woman named Linda. They were together for 5 years, but then she disappeared without a trace." Margaret's stomach clenched. "What do you mean, disappeared?" "I mean vanished, Mother. No one knows where she went. Her family even filed a missing persons report, but Derek told everyone she left him voluntarily." Margaret felt her blood run cold. Was she falling into the hands of a dangerous man? She slowly turned to Derek, who was watching her carefully. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Where is Linda?" Derek's expression darkened, and for the first time since she'd met him, Margaret felt truly afraid. A web of lies. Margaret's heart pounded as she stared at Derek. His dark gaze locked onto her. "Where is Linda?" The question lingered in the air, thick with tension. Derek finally sighed, leaning back. "Why are you asking about Linda?" His voice was calm, too calm. Margaret swallowed. "My daughter did some digging. She found out Linda disappeared." Derek's expression didn't change. He simply folded his hands. "And you believe I had something to do with it?" Margaret didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied him, the man she had loved and trusted. Suddenly, he felt like a stranger. "I just want to know the truth," she said. Derek let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "The truth?" He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "All right, Margaret. You want the truth." His voice dropped. "Linda betrayed me." Margaret's throat went dry. "Betrayed you? How?" Derek's jaw clenched. "She cheated on me with my best friend." Margaret blinked, taken aback. "I loved her," he continued. "I was ready to marry her, but I found out she'd been sneaking around behind my back for months." He let out a bitter laugh. "So yes, she disappeared, but not because of me. She left and ran away with him. I never saw her again." Margaret exhaled, trying to process what she'd just heard. If that was true, why had Linda's family filed a missing persons report? Something still wasn't adding up. Later that night, Margaret lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Derek had kissed her goodnight, but she couldn't shake the unease in her gut. Then her phone buzzed. Evelyn calling again. "Evelyn, it's late." "Mother, listen to me." Evelyn's voice was sharp. "I found something else." "What?" "I got in contact with Linda's sister," Evelyn said. "She said Linda would never have just left. And get this. Before she disappeared, Linda told her sister she was pregnant." Margaret nearly dropped the phone. "Pregnant?" "Yes." And she told her sister she was scared of Derek. She said he was hiding something. Margaret's hands trembled. A woman pregnant. And then she vanished. Was history about to repeat itself? The next morning, Margaret decided to do something she never thought she'd have to do. She would leave. She had to get away from Derek. As she packed a small bag, she heard the front door open. Derek was home early. Margaret quickly shoved the bag under the bed and stepped out of the room. "There you are," Derek said, smiling, but his eyes weren't smiling. "We need to talk." Margaret's heart pounded. "About what?" Derek stepped closer. "About Linda." Her stomach twisted. "I know you've been snooping around," he murmured, calling people, asking questions. Margaret forced herself to stay calm. "I just wanted to understand." Derek sighed, then gently cupped her face. "I love you, Margaret. I don't want you to get hurt." Something about the way he said it sent a chill down her spine. Then he whispered, "So stop digging before it's too late." Margaret swallowed the scream rising in her throat. She was in danger, and she needed to get out fast. Margaret sat frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. So stop digging before it's too late. Derek's warning echoed in her mind, but she forced a smile. "Of course, love. I was just curious, that's all." Derek studied her for a moment, then leaned in and kissed her forehead. "Good. I don't want anything to come between us." She nodded, her fingers trembling behind her back. She needed to leave, now. As soon as Derek left for work the next morning, Margaret locked the bedroom door and dialed Evelyn's number. "Margaret." Evelyn's voice was urgent. "Are you okay?" "No," Margaret whispered, pacing the bedroom. "I think Derek did something to Linda. I need to get out of here." Evelyn cursed under her breath. "Meet me at the old train station at midnight. I'll be waiting." Margaret hung up just as she heard Derek's car pull into the driveway. Her hands trembled. Just a few more hours. She stuffed a small bag with essentials. She slipped on flat shoes, ready to run if needed. As the clock struck midnight, she crept out of bed, step by step, toward the front door. She turned the knob. Click. It didn't budge, locked from the outside. Her heart raced. She turned toward the window. Then, a voice behind her. "Going somewhere, Margaret?" She spun around. Derek stood there, his face calm but his eyes filled with something dark. Her breath hitched. "I just want to get some fresh air," she stammered. Derek smiled. "You're lying," he whispered. Before she could react, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his arms. Margaret screamed, but his hand clamped over her mouth. "You're not leaving me, Margaret." Her blood ran cold. She was trapped. She had to think fast. Margaret's eyes darted around the dimly lit room. She spotted a glass vase on a nearby table. Without hesitation, she grabbed it and smashed it over Derek's head. Crash! Derek groaned, stumbling backward, blood trickling from his forehead. Margaret didn't waste a second. She ran. She sprinted to the back door, her hands trembling as she fumbled with the lock. Come on, come on, come on. Finally, the door clicked open, and she dashed into the cold night. Her feet pounded against the pavement as she raced toward the old train station where Evelyn was waiting, her breath ragged. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Margaret. Derek shouted, "Stop running. You can't escape me." Tears streamed down her face. "I won't let him win." She pushed herself forward, her baby bump making it harder to move fast. Suddenly, headlights flashed ahead. A car screeched to a stop. Evelyn jumped out. "Margaret, get in." Margaret threw herself into the car just as Derek lunged forward. Slam. Evelyn locked the door. Derek pounded on the window, his eyes filled with fury. "Margaret, don't do this," he begged. "We're meant to be together." But Margaret had already seen the truth. Derek was dangerous. With a trembling voice, she whispered, "Drive, Evelyn." The tires screeched as they sped away, leaving Derek screaming in the distance. Margaret sat in the passenger seat, sobbing with relief. "You're safe now," Evelyn reassured her, gripping her hand. Margaret nodded, cradling her belly. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. She had escaped Derek. But what next? She had no home, no plan. Yet as she felt her baby move inside her, she knew she would fight for a new life. And that new life, she would get it. The end.